reason that people come to the work of the Gene Keys is because they're looking for a sense of purpose. And in this time of change and transformation, a lot of people are losing their old jobs and or wanting to start up businesses and are feeling a little lost.
Right.
And even in the feeling, in many indigenous cultures, they intentionally lose people as part of their initiation. So we're going through an initiation right now in the collective. And one of the challenges we faced in this Western world is that so many of us have identified our purpose as what we do, like this great achievement, this thing, that legacy that we leave behind. And that's absolutely a part of our journeys. And at the same time, if we haven't got that attunement to that sense of purpose that's inside of our being, like, I could go to the grave relatively soon, I think, and feel a deep sense of fulfillment because I've attuned deeply to my purpose, 𝐥𝐤𝐤. I may not have reached the fame that I once drove for in my life, but I was always looking for a sense of purpose in something I did. Whereas this, it returns it back to in this moment, this here and now, so that our purpose is a quality that we attune to inside of our inner being that is present in each and every moment.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lonnie, and this is Lady Braven of the Pride. And today I have a very exciting guest on with me. We are going to be talking about Gene Keys. Today I have Matthew Ashdown with me, and I'd like to let Matthew just briefly describe what Gene Keys are and how we can use Gene Keys to unlock the 3D matrix of control and ascend from our shadows into our prime gifts in this lifetime. And it's a very, very exciting concept and tool that we can use. And I'm really excited about this conversation. Thank you very much for being here today, Matthew. Would you mind giving a little bit of an introduction for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can share kind of where I came from and what brought me to the Gene Keys. Because I'm not sure, like many people on this journey, you've had either a spiritual opening or you've dived deep into some kind of pathway of awakening. And I had my life journey and I thought it was all set out, and I was actually a law of attraction teacher, that term that many of you have probably heard. And I was actually doing really well going around North America. Me and my buddy had this program together. We called the Gratitudes. We focused on gratitude, the power of
Gratitudes.
The Gratitudes.
Oh, yeah. I like it.
It has dudes, right?
Yeah.
And we were having a real enjoyable life. We were creating things. We had a book contract. We were connecting with some pretty awesome people in the field of spirituality. But inside of me, there was always this part of me that felt like I was wrong. There's something wrong with me, right? And it wasn't until that came crumbling down, which is the best thing that ever happened to me. It humbled me in many ways, but it also brought me on a deeper spiritual journey where I came to meet the shadow. And I met the shadow and the concept of the shadow through a mentor here on Vancouver Island. And then eventually it led me to this body of work called the Gene Keys, because I was kind of getting trapped in doing shadow work and kind of just like churning out the shadow and wallowing in the shadow. And I'm like, there's got to be more to life than just wallowing through these endless shadows. And then the Gene Keys popped into my life. Somebody brought it into my life. And the Gene Keys is this body of work that, amongst many other things, it helps us to connect deeply to our purpose. And as you mentioned, we are seeing and meeting these shadows that are inside of ourselves. And usually we have to go through life and have those shadows reflected back at us through our relationships and experiences like that. And what Gene Keys offers is kind of like this roadmap that says, these are the shadows that, because of the time of your time of your birth and the imprint at that time, these were the collective shadows in the field at that time that were influencing you. And you have this awareness now, and it's like, oh, I can look at these shadows and I can keep repressing them and pretending that's not me, right? Oh, that's out there, projecting it out there. Or I can look at it and say, oh, okay, this is my piece to work with. And it helped me to really get deep into some of these deep core wounds that I felt inside of myself, my shame, my guilt, my anger, my frustration, all of those things. And it helped me to turn them into gifts. Because one of the most basic fundamental teachings of the Gene Keys, if you can remember anything from this today, would be that every shadow contains a gift. So when we meet this shadow aspect of ourselves, it's in the acceptance of it. It's allowing ourselves to go there and meet it, that we release this gift that we could never find unless we go into that. And so it's about becoming aware of the gifts in all areas of our life, in our relationships, in our finances, our health, the work we do in the world. And so it's very powerful. And like you said, it's like, it's our way of breaking free of the matrix, and it's our individual way. Like it's like everyone has their own pathway through the matrix. And it really helps us. You know, I've worked with couples and people over time where you've got two couples and they've got very different gene key paths, which means they've got very different pathways to awakening. And so if they're trying to awaken each other through their pathway, it's not going to work. But if they allow the other person to wake up through their own pathway, then things can open up. And so the Gene Keys offers these guideposts that each person can individually meet in their own life to break free of, like you said, that control matrix, that, and, you know, beginning with the control that comes from within our own minds, where we suppress these aspects of ourselves that we might be afraid of, or that we just, we feel bad about, right? And so every Gene Key, there's 64 Gene Keys, and they each have a shadow, and they each have a gift, and none is better than the other. Right. They are all different journeys.
This is so amazing. Okay, so thank you for all of that. This, like, I was drawn to you through our mutual friend, Sandra. And okay, I found this so fascinating because this is such a divine time in history for people to start learning about and focusing on what they're doing here on the planet, finding their purpose, and completing karma, moving into their dharma. All of these things are so relevant right now, and people are starting to learn about these different concepts and this kind of information and how they can integrate it into their lives to help move them forward on their own individual path. So the fact that this came into my awareness at this time, everything is divine, everything is on time. I absolutely love it. And I think that this can help a lot of people work through, like you said, their shadow work, but also just propel them on their own individual spiritual journey. It can help elevate them. It can help ascend their own consciousness and awareness of what's going on. So essentially help them waken up to another level of reality, another dimension. So this is how we're ascending into the fifth dimension. And this is just another tool to help us do that and integrate that information in our lives. And for those people who this is a completely new concept, would you say that Gene Keys are similar to a different perspective on astrology? So not using any zodiac signs, but now we're using Gene Keys, but it's looking at your date of birth, where you're born, the energies at that time of birth, and how they affect your life in a similar way as astrology does.
Absolutely. And when we'll show you an example of a chart, your chart, in a little while. Okay. And we'll see that everyone has these different Gene Keys. There's 64 Gene Keys, and they are actually influenced by positions of planets at the time we were born. and those planets sitting in constellations. So the astrology is kind of woven into the background of it without it being directly mentioned. A lot of astrologers really love the Gene Keys work because it brings so many things together for them as well. And it's another tool in the toolbox, as it were.
Right.
And so as you're working with it, the only thing that I would say is that we're not predicting your future per se with this. We're not saying, hey, you know what, this is going to happen in your life. This is the cycles and things like that. That's the astrology is what you want to go to for that. This is about how we meet whatever arises for us. So can we meet it with this sense of equanimity? Can we meet it with this sense of like trust in what is showing up right here, right now, that it is part of my evolution, even if it seems challenging, even if it seems like it's heartbreaking in some way, that there's something here in this experience that is here to support me, as you say, in that next level of evolution. And it's a pathway of deep embodiment. So we're connecting to the higher realms and we're bringing it more deeply down into our physical being so that we can be of service to so many others. And so, yeah, that's what I would say in terms of its relationship to astrology, is that the astrology is woven in there, as are some other ancient sort of bodies of work, like the 𝐦𝐤𝐤 from China, which is over 2,000 years old. That is woven in there. There's in the 𝐦𝐤𝐤, there's 64 hexagrams. And in the Gene Keys, we have 64 Gene Keys. So that number 64, anybody who's studied Nassim Haramein work, it's the fundamental underpinning of so many aspects of the structures in our world, in our universe. And so here we have this that is kind of taken gems from each of these, but it's also brought it into a modern day world. And as the name suggests, it's Gene Keys, so it also weaves in the imprints within our DNA. There's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual dimensions to this work that make it so difficult to be able to sum it up to somebody who's like, what's Gene Keys?
Yeah.
And is that Gene Keys as in Jinkies in the Scooby-Doo show? It's like, no, it's Gene Keys, G-E-N-E keys.
Right.
Yes, we're working with the, literally, it's that imprint at the moment of our conception that is like spread out over time. And we're here to embody the fullness of that moment in time and bring the gift of that moment in time to the collective.
Okay. Now you already mentioned the 𝐸𝐤𝐤, but can you speak about a little bit more of the origin or the person that came up with the initial concept and information with regards to Gene Keys?
Yeah. His name is Richard Budd. He's a lovely old Englishman. He's not old. He's a little bit older than me, so I don't consider that old. And he lives in the UK and has done for most of his life. And he prides himself on being a very normal, ordinary guy that also can tap into multiple dimensions. And at the age of 25, he had this flash of somethingness or nothingness for a few days, where he was just sitting and bathing in this and was receiving so many different downloads that it just was blowing him wide open. He didn't know what to make of it or think of it or do with it. And all he could do was sit with it, and it felt amazing for him in that time. But then he stepped away from it, or he came back into this reality, and it was like, oh, he found it really hard to return to that space. And so his journey since then has been reconnecting to that, through the wisdom that came through in that time. And so he actually was a teacher of something called human design, which is kind of got its similarities, but there's also differences to it. And over time, it took it, like, that was in I think that was in 92 that he had that kind of like breakthrough. But it wasn't until 2008, 2009 that his book was out, ready, and he was sharing that with the world. He's a very patient man. It's actually his purpose Gene Key is the gift of patience. And so he makes us wait for all these new creations that he's bringing forward, but he himself has such a deep trust in the timing of things that he's brought that with. And so he has this incredible patience with with the waking up of the world, as it were. And so this Gene Keys is now really taking root, and it is spreading, and people are coming to it in the most synchronistic of ways.
Right.
And like you said, it's always that timing. And so that's a real essence of who Richard is. He's a poet and a wordsmith, and he's a dad, and I think for so many of us, it's like we're not going off into the Himalayas to meditate for 20 hours a day and things like that. We live amongst people, and that's what he showed me. He showed me a practical way of being able to live amongst others and continue in my spiritual evolution. I didn't have to run away from the world to embody my spirituality. I embody that spirituality through the depth of it. And so he's quite a powerful light in that way. And at the same time, he's a very ordinary guy who would hate to be propped up in too many ways, and would love for everybody to recognize that same thing within them, that their awesome purpose that they've come here to live out. Yeah.
Yes, amazing. Did you say that he wrote a book as well, or a few books?
Yeah, he's got a few books. Welcome to the deep dive of the rabbit hole here. Then, so the main book, if you're wanting to dive into this, it's just fascinating in any way. It's called The Gene Keys, and his name is Richard Rudd, R-U-D-D, and it's a big thick book, and in it he goes into each of these 64 gene keys. But you don't really want to jump into that until you at least know what your birth chart looks like.
Right.
Because then when you know what your birth chart looks like, you'll know which chapters to read in the book.
Right.
You could read them all, and they would all be appropriate. And sometimes I just flick it open at a random page. Do I have my copy here? My copy is somewhere around. But it's like if I was to flick it open, there would be something in there that I'm sure would be just perfect timing for me in this moment. So that's his first book. And then he's wrote many others from that are aspects of the program that have evolved. And so there's lots to be able to dig into. But one of the things that he would encourage being his purpose gene key, and I would, also say, is that practicing patience with this, there can be this desire to jump into all this information really quickly and read through it. I know, because I did this in the beginning. And it's like, oh, too much. I'm confused.
Well, I can kind of relate to that because I've had a session with you and we've gone over my gene key map, but just on a preliminary level. It sounds to me like there is a lot of information to take in and to integrate and to fully understand in a way that we can utilize this information. So I would assume that there's different chapters or levels, or, it's a process. It's not something that you can just like read a book about and then you're done. It's more of a process of understanding each element of the map, our individual maps, and learning how we can use that information in our lives. So I don't know, it might be an ongoing journey, just like everything else.
That's exactly the way to look at it. And if I could simplify it in any way for anybody going into it, is that just exactly that, is to kind of take it one step at a time. I mean, I might work with one particular gene key for a month and really immerse myself in it. And he's got another little book, and it's little, like he's got his big book, and then he's got this little book, and it's called The Art of Contemplation. Okay. And so this whole approach to the gene keys, working with the gene keys, is about contemplation. It's about inquiry. It's about curiosity. So as we see, we'll bring up your chart in a minute. It's approaching it with this curiousness and at beginning by stirring it through in the mind. And when I first approached it, and he would talk about contemplation, I'm like, oh yeah, contemplation. That's easy. Think about it, right? And then, but what he shares in this Art of Contemplation book, and so all of his work, is that it's grounded in so much more. There's a mental contemplation, there's the emotional contemplation, and then there's finally the physical, where literally our physical body will go through a transformative process. And that can take, that can take time. And so underneath it all, it's like, one of the other things I would say about it is that rather than knowledge, it's that there is knowledge in this. There is lots of knowledge and information in this. But when I view it as living wisdom, it's amazing what can come to life. Like, I was working with a group of people last night, and it's always, when I'm hosting these, it's just an openness to, okay, what's showing up in the group field here, and what is that bringing forward? And sometimes I don't know always where it's going, but I pay attention to these synchronicities. So yesterday I was working with a group, and they were mostly in Alberta, and they've got hurricanes and tornadoes going through there. Well, tornadoes going through parts of Alberta right now. And one of them had had a real tornado experience where she'd just been looking, very close to this tornado. And then we kind of developed into conversation. And then we were talking about how the gene keys are like these archetypes, and that we can, they're these bodies of collective behavior and individual behavior. Like, there's the archetype of the president, there's the archetype of the magician, there's the archetype of the teacher, all these different archetypes that exist in the mass consciousness that we demonstrate within our lives. And so not only are these keys kind of pathways, they can actually be very tangible characters that we play with. And so I was introducing this idea of, the stories and the myths that we resonate with, who are the beings from history, the gods, the Lord of the Rings, the stories that we really resonate with. And because there's all these archetypes within there. And somebody got quite excited and was like, oh, well, I was thinking about this week before you even mentioned this, and I was thinking about the Wizard of Oz, and I picked up this book, and it's called The Wizard of Us by 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐿. And I was like, wasn't this fascinating? We've got tornadoes whipping through Alberta, and then we've got somebody diving into the Wizard of Oz, which starts off with a tornado whipping through Kansas. And so now we get to play with that metaphor of the tornado and what that means for us, and and we can relate it to parts of the gene keys. And so it's like living wisdom. It's not book wisdom. So I don't always know what's going to come through. Right. And I have to allow for these kinds of things to kind of emerge from our storyline, as it were.
Okay. So having said all of that, shall we dive into what a gene key map looks like? And maybe we'll use mine as the first example.
About it, we're using yours. So what I would encourage everybody to do is just, the astrologers out there might be thinking, oh, this looks simple compared to an astrology map. But for those of you who are brand new to this, don't expect to understand it all at once. Let's begin by looking at something. We'll see what we gravitate towards.
Right.
And maybe I'll have Lani, pick something. Because one of the things about the gene keys as well, it's a very intuitive body of work. And it's about cultivating our intuition. And so Lani's intuition might be drawn to a particular key for some reason. And we can explore that. And then we can see if that's, because even though we've had another chat, that was a different day and a different time. Let's see what's coming alive now. So this is Lani's chart, and everybody will have a chart that looks the same as this. It'll be the same shape. They'll have the same colors in the same places. The words inside the circles will be the same, but what will be different is the numbers. And those numbers, we can get attached to numbers. In our world, we're used to numbers meaning, the number of dollars in our bank accounts and things. It's very quantitative. And when we view the gene keys, it's like they're, the easiest way to put it, the way that Richard calls it, is they're wormholes to love. So they're qualitative rather than quantitative. There's a magic to them. Okay. And so prepare for number synchronicity to start showing up. Like, for instance, it's interesting actually, because if I look at this key for you, is called your life's work at the top. We'll bring this up to begin with, but then we'll see where Lani's intuition wants to go. Is the 29th gene key. Now, I have the 29th gene key in another sphere in my chart, and it's related to stability and feeling rooted and feeling connected to the earth. And we just moved into a new home. My house sits on lot 29. to me, that's a little bit in, it's like, I love that number synchronicity. A lot of people might look past that, but that's the kind of thing I notice. And sometimes I can get a little heady with it, but most of the time I'm just playing with it and seeing what arises. If there's a number, if there's a number that keeps occurring in my life, perhaps there's a gene key that I can look at. So like yesterday, I kept seeing the number 51 everywhere. So I'm spending time with the 51st gene key. So we each have all these different numbers, and you'll see there's a number plus a decimal place, and then a number after that. So somebody could be a 29.2, like Lani is, or somebody might be a 29.4. There's 6 line numbers altogether. So it could be 29.1 all the way up to 29.6. And what that line number does is it adds some individual flavor to it. Okay, so Lani might have a friend whose birthday is a couple of days after her, and there's a lot of similarities, but that line number can add some difference to it. I got 2 friends actually that they are a day apart. They're quite different individuals, but you can also see the thread of the gene keys through it. And
I just want to say, I have a dear girlfriend of mine who was born on the exact same day, on the exact same year, probably at a different time, but how similar is this gene key map going to be for her?
Aha, that's a great question. I love meeting my gene key twins in that way, which is like people who have the same birthday as me. And this is why with the gene keys chart, one of the things we say with gene keys is people first, numbers second, meaning I don't look at somebody's chart and automatically assume I understand who the person is, because it's very much your own experience. I kind of guide people and work with people in coming to their own understanding of their chart. I give them pointers and things like that. But if I was to say, oh, this is what you're like this and this and this. Now they might be able to relate to some of it, but some of it maybe not. So with a friend that's got the same birthday, different time means that there might be some difference, especially in the line numbers that I just mentioned, which is after the decimal place. But also this circle here, it's called the attraction sphere. And that's based on the time, that's based on the position of the moon in the sky at the time you were born. Well, it's actually 3 months before you were born. But that, the moon moves quickly. And so it moves through the gene keys quickly. So that's the one that's most likely to be different. It's very likely that some of the others are very similar. So what it would be really interesting is Lani talking about their lived experience and seeing how they can relate to these particular gene keys that they have in common, but also seeing how their lives have played out seemingly quite differently at times. But there can be these underlying threads of the archetypal journey still within there. And so when somebody has so many keys that are similar to them, the things you admire most about them are probably the gifts that are in their chart, which means they're very likely in you yourself. And then the things that drive you crazy about them are probably the shadow elements, which, as much as they have it in them, you may not have fully embraced in yourself. So having a gene key twin, as I call them, like that, is a lot of fun to play with. And it's a really great example of how our chart does not define us, but it gives us these guideposts that just resonate so deeply. So again, Lani and your friend, you might have very different jobs in life. You may have different family structures and things like that. But there may be things that you just really relate to and connect to that are part of this underlying energetic story.
Yes. Okay. So there is one key here I want to talk about specifically. And I kind of think that me and my gene key twin would be similar with regards to culture.
Okay.
So yeah, can we talk about like what is the shadow, what is the gift, and what is the evolution?
Yeah, beautiful. All right, so this is a great example. And so we'll work with this gene key here, she's pointing at here. It's called the culture. And for anybody who's watching you and listening to you too, who's listened to your podcast regularly or knows you personally, they will likely very much just be, oh, that's totally what she brings to this community, right? And so it's something we come to see for ourselves, but it's something also that the community will bring to our awareness, as it were. It's like our culture, our first culture is our family, right? So there's a dynamic in the family that we're born into. And so very often for a lot of people, it's that they experience the shadow of that gene key in their family. So they might, for you, it might have been that as a young child in your family, that there might have been aspects of it that felt very controlling, right? Or that you felt like you needed to tightly control things in order to feel safe in the world, right? And so that's part of that. Now, the culture sphere, one of the interesting things with the culture sphere, if you want to look at the shadow that blocks prosperity for you, we look at this gene key. We look at the shadow here. It's literally where we most likely block the flow of money, because when this one is open for us, it's like we are experiencing synchronicities left, right, and center. And we are opening up to just like these magical connections. And one of the ways, these blue circles, all of them together, so these four here in the triangle, this one's half blue and half red because it's also in another sequence. This is called the pearl sequence, or the prosperity sequence. So these keys all have something to do with our prosperity. And our culture is kind of like, think of it like, this is the piece, this is the note that you play in the musical orchestra of life. It's the note that people will probably recognize you for. It's the note where you'll feel a lot of pressure to expand, right? And so the 21st gene key, it moves from the shadow of control to the gift of authority, and it's what's called the city of valor. Now, the city, we won't spend as much time on here, but if we're talking about the enlightened, awakened state where there is no control, or where there is no...
So valor would be the 5D state.
Yeah, and beyond, right? Yeah. It's like there's an essence, and that essence is always there. Like 5D is always here in the here and now, even within, when we can see it, and that's a great example, right? It's like a good way of talking about it. So we can see the 3D. The 5D exists here. It's about being able to see that. And so our shadows are the ones that prevent us seeing and connecting to those higher dimensions.
Right.
And so here, this is looking at in your life, and we've talked about this, right? One of the things that you have this passion for is helping people break free from this matrix of control, right? From the control that we experience in so many arenas of our life, from a governmental to a media to all of that kind of stuff. And so this is how we work with a gene key. Is first we look at, okay, control. All right, this theme of control. And chances are the first place we will see it is outside of ourselves. And so this can be something we can use to look at as this, like, okay, where am I feeling controlled? So under the shadow of it, the shadow is fueled by this sense of victimhood. Every shadow is fueled by a feeling of being a victim of something. And so it's all about looking at, where is the victim hiding? It's easy to see the victim in another. Where's the victim hiding within me? So every time I have an outburst, or I feel shame or something like that at some level, I'm feeling a victim of something. And so with this, we look at where the victim of the need for control is. Right. And it can show up in many different levels because it's in your culture sphere. It would have to do with the environment in some way. So it can be that we are a victim of somebody else who needs to maintain authority, who needs to be in control, and you can just get really triggered by those people, maybe. Right? It's like,
this is really interesting because a lot of things in my life right now are manifesting in a way that I'm trying to activate my solar plexus. This is willpower and control, right?
Yeah.
So I was recently looking at all of the areas in my life where I'm giving my power away and I'm trying to control something that is out of my control.
Yes.
So I've actually already deep dived into this concept of control all around me and where I'm draining my energy and what I'm trying to control that I don't have any control over. So this is really good shadow work.
And that's awesome. And that's what a way I look at the gene keys as well, is that you approach it and like, oh man, this is what I've been doing. It's almost like a confirmation that I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
Right? We're not
Absolutely.
here to say, hey, this is what you're missing from your life. We're here to say, hey, you've probably already been living it. You just didn't even know it, that this
Right.
is a big part of. And so, yeah, absolutely it is look at, that's exactly what authority is, the gift of authority. So it's the same energy moving through the different shadows, gifts and cities.
Hmm.
It's just a different frequency. So when we see somebody who is controlling, or or feels or is being controlled, right? There's the two poles of this shadow as well. There's the reactive and the repressive. So the repressive nature is that they're easily controlled, they give away power to others. And then the reactive nature is they need to be in control of everything. And
Hmm.
so if you're one or the other, then you probably meet people who are the other to bring balance and equilibrium and the full understanding of that shadow, so that the gift can emerge. So when I'm not reacting to those who are easily controlled, or when I'm not trying to control those, then I can allow this gift of authority to emerge. And this gift of authority is one that naturally draws people in. And it has a lot to do with your presence,
Right.
right? So we can actually control people through our presence, right? At the shadow frequency, we can control people through our presence. But at the gift frequency, it's like, wow, people are just drawn to us. There's a magnetism that people feel because, and being on authority, it usually means that you do have wisdom or knowledge to impart, but we cannot force authority. That's the problem we're seeing in the world, is people are trying to enforce authority
Hmm.
rather than allowing their natural authority to emerge. And that's what this gene key is about in so many ways.
Right. With regards to authority, I find that a lot of people don't actually understand what it means to stand under their own authority, because we've been raised and programmed and indoctrinated in a world where the authority was always in a figure outside of ourselves, like the teacher or the doctor or the policeman, or authority was always out there, and we've been raised in a way where we're always told what to do and how to obey and comply with authority. So what I find is that not a lot of people know what it means to have self-authority and stand under your own authority.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm passionate about, is trying to help educate people of what it means to be sovereign, what it means to be free, what it means to stand under your own authority and your own higher power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly all of that,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, and when we're truly living from the gift, we don't even have to prove it or try it. It's like people feel it and sense it in us, right?
Right.
And like you said, people have, one of the things with the gene keys is we use these words. And so authority is the gift, and yet authority is something so many of us have had a challenge with. And so it's like we can actually fear our own authority because we've been subject to painful authority in the past. So
Right.
like you said, being able to claim that, to empower other people is a big part of this journey with that 21st gene key. And so, people will turn to you as an authority. They will recognize you and see you in this light. And um, and it will come through effortlessly. When the gift manifests, we don't have to try to be that gift.
Hmm.
It's literally when we let go of control. Like for instance, my wife, she has this gene key in her chart, and when she is working with people, it's literally when she allows herself to surrender and let go of control, that she brings through wisdom and teachings to other people that blow even her own mind,
Hmm.
right? Because it's like it's coming from a source within her that is not something her human mind is necessarily in touch with all the time. And it's the
Right.
same for any of us, is that when that gift when I feel, the times when I feel most empowered and people can say, wow, that was profound. Can you repeat what you said? I'm like, I don't remember what I just said, because it's like I've stepped out of the way so that my vehicle can be used in a way. And that's, so that's your authority, is like you have that natural authority, and people will feel loyalty towards you. They will want to support you. This is the thing with people of the 21st gene key in that position, is that if you're feeling unsupported financially or by community, it's looking, okay, can I allow for the possibility that maybe this shadow of control is playing out in me somewhere, and I'm not sure where? And that's one of the things I would say with the gene keys, if you could take anything away from this, is we see these shadows and the mind will come in and say, oh yeah, that's totally me. Or more likely with the shadow, oh no, that's not me. That's all those people over there. But that's what the shadow, we do with the shadow, is we project it out there so that we don't have to look within. And it doesn't mean it's not there as well in that other person's experience. It's just that we are being tasked with where it is inside of ourselves, so that we can actually genuinely speak to, so we can challenge the people in control by coming from our genuine authority, rather than fighting them back with more control, which is kind of what history has done. Right? It's like controllers have been met by controllers, whereas here it's like, oh, now we're meeting people with this true authority. And it's like, people with that true authority, there's no question. It's like, yeah, I want to serve this person because they are genuinely serving me. They're not out for their own good. They're genuinely here to serve me.
Right.
And so when we look at the shadows, one of the first thing I just say to people is allow for the possibility. I might not see it, right? I know one person, they had the wound, the shadow was denial. And they're like, I do a lot of deep work. I don't think I'm in denial. And I'm like, that's the intellect right there. And I said, just allow for the possibility. 2 days later, went to the doctor, brought up some condition, mentioned something, and the doctor said, lady, you're in serious denial, right? And so it was reflected back at her. So it's just like, allow for the possibility. So rather than say, because every shadow contains a gift. So if I can meet inside of me where I'm controlling, I can release my authority. But if I refuse to acknowledge that part of me that might be controlling, I can never really tap into that authority.
Right.
If I'm not accepting it. If I'm not accepting it, so the question would be, where am I controlling? Where am I a victim of the need for control?
Right.
And then just let it go and play with life and see what happens.
And there is a lot of work to be done in that. Like, I'm a big fan of journaling. I journal. That's how I process and integrate these different ideas and concepts. So I end up journaling a lot of this information out. But that is just one gene key. And I hope that everybody can see how much you can really deep dive. Like, we didn't even fully cover, like, we didn't get into the line 6. We didn't get into the city of valor. We didn't,
Or those briefly, we can do that briefly if you like.
Okay, sure, briefly, but like, each key has so much information to unpack and fully understand, so that we can try and integrate that over time in our lives. So yeah, let's kind of get into what that the City of Valor means.
Yeah. So again, the cities are really the purest essence of a gene key. And ironically, in a way, it can be, the city includes both the shadow and the gift. But the difference is, in the city, there's no judgment of the shadow, right? So they're somebody with the city may still feel controlling to others in a way, but they're not coming through with that intention of being controlling, or they're not afraid of being controlling. Because that's the other thing too with our shadows. It's like we can become afraid of being that. And so valor, when I see somebody who has this city of valor, it's like they're warriors. They're shamanic warriors, right? And so they are people that work with, it's like you're constantly wielding this sword of truth that you have. You're wielding it in you're authoring your life, authority. You're authoring your life. You're no longer being authored by others in that sense. And another way of looking at it too is, it's like the chivalry of the medieval ages, right? But we're not talking about knights rescuing damsels in distress or any kind of victim kind of mindset like that. We're talking about the true valor of the symbolism of our masculine pole fully surrendering to the feminine pole within, because it's like the feminine births everything. The feminine births life. The feminine births the masculine, right? It's like all life on this plane comes from, in this dimension, comes from the source, the feminine source. And so the antidote, in a way, to control in our world is that aspect of the feminine. It's that sword wielding, truth wielding warrior that constantly stands vigilant for that within their own life. Now, so the valor, the city, think of it as well too, like we are evolving consciously from control to authority. So we start out being controlling people in our lives, but then we become aware of that shadow and we step more into our gift of authority, right? So we're moving in that direction. We're evolving in that direction. The way we look with cities is it's almost like they are involving. They are coming from the spiritual dimension down into the physical dimension. So the city of valor, although I'm using words to describe it, they are beyond words, and they are full of paradoxes to the mind. The mind cannot fully understand them intellectually. If it tries to understand them intellectually, it's going to get fried, which is exactly what the cities want to do. It's like, let's get that mind out of the way. And so it's like they're all flavors of grace, right? So if
flavors of grace.
Yeah, I like that. They're flavors of grace. It's like, one of the things my wife's, one of her mentors says that let grace do the heavy lifting, which is I meet, and it's perfect with this 21st gene key, I meet inside of me where I feel this control or being controlled, right? And I just notice what that brings up in me, and I can fully accept that wound. Now, that doesn't mean, especially with the 21st gene key, acceptance doesn't mean I'm just stepping back and not doing anything in the world anymore. Right? That's this understanding of acceptance in the way.
Letting go of any resistance.
Exactly. I'm just, this is what I'm feeling in this moment. I fully accept it. Okay, take me where you need to take me. And in that, when we let go of the resistance, then we allow for grace to step in. And so that's when it's like, we're stepping out of the I-ness and the me-ness, and it's like this aspect of ourselves comes through us, works through us. And this is where you see, like, I'm thinking of when women walking their babies across the road in a pram or something, and a car comes, and you've heard the stories of women lifting up cars to retrieve their kids underneath it, because these cities, they're like superpowers, right? In the ancient yogis, they spoke of these cities as these superpowers. And there was some caution against getting attached to them mentally, but because of the way we work with the gene keys, it's recognizing these cities are always available to us, and we can't use them if we identify with them. If we say that that's me doing the valor, then it's not the city. Right? That's me actually probably thinking I'm in control under the shadow.
Yeah.
So they're like, think of the city like superpowers. And then the line number 6, it says system there. Line number 6, if you've got a line number 6, Lanny, you are somebody who is ahead of others in the ways of thinking. And it's like, you can see what is possible, and it's really feckin' disappointing the way things are right now. So people with line 6 often have to meet this disappointment with the world as it is. And one of the greatest challenges for anyone with a line 6, and that's the only place you have it. So this is important from like money perspective on one level, but also community. And it's just like to include yourself amongst the humans, so you can tap into and connect to, your ET guides or your other multidimensional guides. And at the same time, where your power and authority comes from is being rooted here in your physical body, in this, because the ultimate system, you see the systems of control right? You literally see the systems of control in the matrix. And then it's like expanding people beyond that to the systems that are attuned to nature, attuned to the higher realms, right? So that's your line 6 piece. So you can look at the line number and the gift together. So at the shadow frequency, there's a control system that you can feel limited by, right? And it's like, we've got to break through this. And the solution, or your piece of the solution, is the authority that is recognizing the naturalness of our world and the natural systems that we can model things after.
Right. Natural divine law.
Yeah.
Universal law. I mean, I
Yeah,
think
it's just really
that's pretty
small.
accurate for myself. I feel like that's 100%. I resonate with that, that shadow and that gift for sure. That makes sense in my life. I feel like that's what my life's all about right now.
And then you might see with other parts, you might see that as well. And one of the things I would say is that because of the culture sphere where it sits, if somebody looks at their culture sphere and they're like, I don't see that for myself, it might be because they need to work on this red series first, which is called the Venus sequence. And this Venus sequence can help us unlock things so that we can see this more easily.
Okay.
So although it's a non-linear, profile, there is a benefit to approaching it through a linear way to begin with.
So I think what you're trying to say is that, like, because they're color coded, you're meant to start off with the genius first, which is the green, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then you go into the red, which is the Venus. And then you go into the blue. What is that called?
Prosperity.
Prosperity.
Or the pearl sequence, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So
it's like our pearls, until we are in touch with our genius and know what our genius is, why would we, we could go and try and make money and get prosperous doing something that is not our genius, right? And then we'll feel deeply unfulfilled and deeply unhappy. And so your activation sequence, those 4 green circles, is your genius. And so when you step into and own those gifts for yourselves fully, there's this sense of fulfillment. It's like, I'm living on purpose in my every moment, not just when I'm with clients, not just when I'm speaking on a podcast, not just when I'm feeling that sense of fulfillment when I'm interacting with my family members, with my neighbors. It's always present because it's not dependent on outer situations.
Right. Oh, I really want to dive into all of this for myself. But okay, now moving away from my gene map, my example, can we talk about maybe some more prominent figures that people would kind of recognize or resonate with the different attributions?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a number of them stored in this data bank of my mind, or I can actually pull them up quickly on here, some of them.
If you have them easily available, I think it would be.
So in this moment, who do you feel like if we spoke to this group of people here?
Okay, so there's a number of prominent people in the world right now that could be quite polarizing. So some people would like them and some people wouldn't like them.
That's a perfect example,
yeah.
Right? Yeah. Well, should we?
Well, I think if we were to say Trudeau, I think everybody hates Trudeau.
Yeah, let's go with Trudeau.
Okay.
Let's go with Trudeau. And so Trudeau has his gene keys just like everybody else, and so I know some of his quite well, actually, because he's pushed my buttons a little bit, and I've kind of wondered. So for him, actually, his culture sphere is a good one to look at, because his culture one, it tends to be how the world at large will recognize him. Watch his culture, and then his life's work, which is the one at the very top. And so his culture sphere is the 34th gene key, and it moves from force to strength to majesty. So straight away, we've got somebody here who's prime minister, for one thing. Majesty, there's that, you know, kind of like this rulership kind of idea. The shadow frequency is force. And a lot of people right now could say, oh yeah, like he's trying to force things through. He's trying to force measures through without actually talking to anybody about it, without running it past the public. He's just using
forcing a lot on the public.
Yeah, whether it comes to things around the vaccines, or whether it comes to pipeline stuff or things, anything like that. And people have got different perspectives on it. Now, there are those people who admire Trudeau, and you know, they give me it's like they give me the greatest journey in coming to how to understand, you know, and my purpose gene key is the gift of understanding. And so my intolerance would say the shadow is intolerance. So it's like, I just can't tolerate Trudeau and I can't understand why anybody would support him. Right? Absolutely. And so, but then I've got this gift of understanding, and it's like, okay, now I've got to understand, what is it that drives, what is it that people see in Trudeau? And so maybe some others are somehow seeing this gift of strength of, like, you know, where one person could say, oh, you know, he was a primary school teacher and now he's in charge of the country. Like, one person could say, you know, talk about forcing your way in and using your dad's name to get into power. But other person might say, wow, look at the strength that he's had to bring within him to change himself from a primary school teacher to being this. And so it's fully possible that some people are seeing the gift element within him and others are seeing the shadow. And so it's like, you know, Trudeau's an interesting one, or anybody in power is interesting, because I'm never in the same room as Trudeau, right? But it's like, and yet I could still sit here with all my resentments of him and feel powerless to this being that's out there that seems to be forcing these things through. So he actually teaches me how to step into my own majesty and my own strength by how I react or respond to his shadow of force, right? So when I see that shadow of force and when I see him pushing me, he'll push my buttons. He'll, you know, I'll feel this anger and ridiculousness. And then I come and, all right, I've got to fully feel this. So I can actually thank him. And anybody who's ever, you know, stood up, like anybody, like Pierre Poilievre or anybody that's kind of stood up to him in some way, you know, it's because of who he is. He's provoked this, he's caused them to step into their own gifts and their own, right? Now, they might still be doing it out of reaction and out of hatred to him. And just my own guidance would be like, yeah, if we can stem that hatred, if we can really heal that resentment within ourselves, then we're not reacting to his authority. We're becoming a true authority that we would want to, you know, to model.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he does that. He also has the 10th gene key as his life's work. And the 10th gene key moves from the shadow of self-obsession to the gift of naturalness. And it's the city of being. And at the most extreme shadow frequency, it's pure narcissism. And so a lot of people will see Trudeau and they will say narcissist, and they may not be wrong about that, right? And
absolutely.
I
have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so it goes from shadow to the gift and then to the city. That is the gene key and the gene sequence, but is that necessarily something, the evolution that everybody goes through in one lifetime, or maybe they don't go all the way through that in a lifetime? And
yeah, absolutely. Trudeau could be going 10 rounds on this before he like picks up on the gift of these.
Oh, right.
He might, through his like stumbles and falls in this lifetime, he might come to it. Who knows, right? And one day, every single one of us is going to reach that state of enlightenment in however many lifetimes. One of the interesting ones, I'll just bring this up quickly on your chart here. So I've done this with, you know how they've documented the past lives of children? And so children can remember their past lives, and there's been some where they've even named who they were, and they've proven who they were in that lifetime.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I've done is I found the gene keys chart of that child, and then I found the gene keys chart of that previous lifetime, because
Okay.
because the information is available. And so with that, I can look for, oh yeah, what gene keys continue to emerge. And the one to watch out for is this one. It's called evolution.
Evolution.
Yeah, evolution. This is the one where the shadow is the one that's probably our deepest challenge in this lifetime in many ways. And it's like, if we don't get this one in this lifetime, then we will come back and we will meet it in another lifetime. And interestingly enough, what I've seen is that it usually shows up in the red sequences in the next lifetime. So, you know, for instance, if you didn't meet this shadow and heal this shadow, and if you didn't experience that rapture that is potential of this, and the rapture is that moment where, you know, for you, it might be when you have those moments where you connect to your guides, your ET guides, or whoever it is. And it's just this rapture where you're in this space of like pure joy and desirelessness. It's like you're not even.
I mean, I know it's a constant evolution and it's process, but I feel like I'm like this makes sense to me as well. I feel like most of my life I've had a desire for things. I've had a desire for family, a desire for love, a desire for, you know, things that I haven't necessarily achieved. And now I've done a lot of work, but now I am in a state of lightness. I'm in a state of detachment, and I'm in a state of pure joy and bliss and just loving every aspect of my life. But that's a recent thing. I feel like I've kind of come into this new space of just pure joy and acceptance of my life as it is right now. And I don't feel that longing or that desire that I used to have for a very long time. I don't feel it anymore.
Yeah. And that's, you know, that's part of this journey with it. And it's, that's exactly, you know, what that lightness is. And it's not to make our desires wrong. It's the lightness is able to say, oh, I've still got desires, but I'm not going to cling to them the way I used to. I'm holding to them lightly.
They used to actually drain me, my desires.
Exactly.
And now they don't.
Serious about them, right?
Right.
Yeah. Seriousness is part of the shadow of desire. It's like, you know, and we see this more in the spiritual path than you do in most other, you know, journeys in life, right? Is that I'm got to achieve enlightenment, or I've got to wake up in this lifetime, and we get so serious about it, you know, and that seriousness is the block to it. The seriousness is one of the shadows. And so, yeah, if we can, so we have those desires still, we can lighten them. And all the way till the end, we have desire. Like the last desire, the yogis talk of the last desire is the desire for God. And we even have to let go of that desire, because we can't know God unless if we've got a desire for God, you know? So it's like anything. So one of the things, again, with this journey is like, it's peeling away the onion layers. So I've worked with a particular gene key. It's given me much. And I feel the gift exploding through me in arenas and areas of my life. And then every so often, it's like, oh, there's the shadow there. So there's this constant vigilance for it. It's like the shadow is still there. Like Richard Rudd, the teacher of this, he's not a purified, completely pure being in that. He's very pure, like a lot of people will say. At the same time, he'll talk very openly about how he was sitting with guilt this week, you know, and he noticed that guilt. And because we're in this, it's like none of these shadows is wrong. Every shadow contains a gift. So if a shadow is arising me, if there is something, if there's one of these shadows surfacing in me, it's because there's another gift that wants to emerge out of that. This time I can do it with awareness. So for instance, I have the shadow of reaction twice in my chart, which I, you know, used to react to quite. Well, no, I don't. I don't have the shadow of reaction. And it would be, you know, I'd like, oh God, I'd hate to think people think I'm reactive, but I can be reactive. And that reaction is actually speaking to a desire or a need that I have underneath within me that hasn't been met. And because the reaction is loud, I'm like, "Ugh," and I can feel my solar plexus tense up. It's like, oh, okay, there we go. There's more of the gift of revolution that wants to emerge out of this. So I'm
Mm,
not making the reaction wrong anymore, which means I can actually move through it a lot quicker. So that's one of the things that people say again and again with the gene keys is when they first started it, they might be in the shadow of constriction they might have felt it their whole life, and then they start working with the gene keys or something similar, and they realize that the shadow of constriction still shows up, but they don't feel it for as long because they are actually able to presence it because they've
right.
got this kind of guide map, as it were.
You know what? It's also deep diving into each one of the words and discovering the full definition and what that word actually means
Yes,
in relation to our personal experience.
absolutely.
So every one of those words, like I really have to get into it to figure out how it's relevant in my life.
Yeah, and that's that. Thank you for bringing that up because that's one of the things that I would say about the gene keys is that these words have been very specifically brought through, and some of them can be a little challenging. Um, and we've got a meaning associated with them. For instance, I have got the 12th gene key, which is the gift of discrimination. Well, most of my life, the word discrimination meant discriminating against somebody because of something in a bad light, right?
Mhm.
But the gift of discrimination is about discriminating what's coming from my heart versus what's coming from my mind or my ego, right?
Right.
Not to place them in the same, definitely what's coming from the ego. And so discrimination it's taken on a whole new meaning. And so you're right. It's like we purify our relationship. One that is a city that a lot of people struggle with is the city of sacrifice, because most of us think of sacrifice in terms of where we've sacrificed our purpose for others or where and that's not, the essence of the city of sacrifice, is to recognize that we're making something sacred and that beyond, when we reach that state beyond the mind, it doesn't even feel like a sacrifice. It was worth letting go of that because we're experiencing something all that much better. But from the
Right.
level of the ego, it looks like we're letting go of something we don't want to let go of because it means something to us. So
But
yeah, absolutely.
sacrifice, the word itself is to make something sacred.
Mm,
Is that what it is?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Hmm.
And so it's like these things that kind of stir that up, and that's the nature of this. It's like it stirs up those contemplations, and because again, it's like, okay, does it mean that? What does it mean? What does this word mean?
Yeah.
And then you can read Richard's words on it, and it can conjure up all these things, and like, I would never have connected that with this. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So one of the things I would say is, as you look at your chart, don't assume the word means what your mind first thinks it means, because
Right.
they are all deep dives.
Mhm.
I struggle to think of another example in this moment, but I'm sure something will come to light.
Right.
Yeah, so it's
Right. So maybe we can go over one more. Um, just an example, a quick
yeah.
example of um, somebody else that everybody will know and maybe have polarizing views on, and somebody like,
How about Trump? Like that
okay.
name, he who shall not be named. Yeah, yeah. Come on, let's pick somebody who is, you know. It's interesting. I know his gene key chart very well, actually. He actually has a very similar gene key profile to his activation sequence is very similar to 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐿's because their birthdays are around the same time. They've got a lot of keys that are different, obviously, and they're very different people. But when you can start looking at the similar threads, in the last couple of weeks, they've been both put under the laser, as it were. They've been coming to the news, and there's been a documentary about 𝐤𝐤𝐤𝐿. And so there's something going on within those particular gene keys that is being resolved through their stories, and they're bringing things to light. Whether we like them or dislike them, that's the beauty of this work at this citic frequency. There isn't that judgment of them. And the 12th gene key is their life's work. So our life's work is what we're here to do. This is what we're here to do. And it's interesting that these two people are so much in the limelight in different ways. And I'm sure there's other people with the 12th gene key in their life's work in the limelight in specific ways, because it's one of the last shadows that we actually transmute as a species. And so it's the idea of our separateness. The shadow is vanity, the gift is discrimination, and the city is purity, right? And to give you the essence of the vanity, we fall in love with our small self, right? So vanity is actually part of the journey. We have to love ourselves, right? Part of the journey is to love ourselves. So to avoid the vanity is not going to work. We have to go through a journey of loving ourselves when the world doesn't. Mm-hmm. Whereas at the city frequency of purity, the higher self falls in love with itself, right? So it's still falling in love. It's this myth of love throughout it, and it's deeply transformational. It's about the death of an old way and the birth of a new way, and there's a lot of activity in the throat chakra, and both 𝐤𝐤𝐤𝐿 and Trump use their voices to convey so much, right? Mm-hmm. And at the shadow frequency, it can be either hidden, meaning they can think differently but not say anything, but that's not those two. The reason they're in the limelight is because they speak their truth. And at the shadow frequency, it could come across as, or not come across as, there can be an intention to hurt other people, mm-hmm. Or to make them wrong or something like that. That can be one way that voice is used. The gift frequency is to speak to the things that, discrimination is like the things that are really coming from the heart, bringing out the authentic self in others. So 𝐤𝐤𝐤's work, whether people disagree with her or agree with her, her focus is she wants people to express their most authentic self in the world. And of course, you're going to get challenged, right? And now Trump as well. It's like, so a lot of people, if you hear people picking apart Trump, they're definitely focusing on the shadow aspects of that 12th gene key. And if you see people who are supporting Trump, you can hear them in that. His evolution gene key is the 11th gene key, which is the gift of idealism, which means he holds a strong ideal in his heart and in his mind, and one that he wants to bring to the world. Now, people who disagree with that ideal or think it's crazy are going to see the shadow frequency. People who support that ideal are going to be like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And the city of that one is light. The city of the 11th gene key is light. And so you will hear people speak of Trump as a light worker, and people will feel he's a light worker. And then other people will feel he's like the embodiment of evil. So how can we, how can that same person doing the same things? And it's pointing to the relativistic nature of our universe. And so the 11th gene key, which is his evolution, is all about the battle of good and evil. It takes us into the concepts of evil. It takes us into this, these ideas of it's deep. So I can see that with somebody like a Trump and a 𝐤𝐤𝐤, why they are so seemingly divisionary in the world, and they can divide if they're not aware of it, if their true purpose is to unite, because the city of purity is pure in talk, pure in speech, pure in words. So we might, again, coming back to words, we think, we could say love and light, but you've heard people saying love and light in a way like, screw you, I don't want to talk to you, so I'm just going to say love and light and run away from this conversation right now. You know what I mean? So it's like they're loving words, but the intention behind them is not.
Right.
And so purity is about how we use our words, and the purity, those words, the pure words, it's about the vibration. So it matters less what you say and the frequency behind them. And that frequency of purity, I'm like choking up here. This one's obviously for me because I got this 12th gene key. That purity just comes through and it touches people. When people speak from that place of purity, somebody who's on the receiving end of that can feel that purity. And so I definitely do not speak from a pure place in every moment of my life. And there are moments when it can, it can come out, it can emerge. But I also have to be very mindful of that vanity, that, the hidden vanity that wants to hurt another through my words.
Right.
So, for me, Trump and Teal Swan are both great examples, because I have that 12th gene key in my culture. It's my culture sphere. So how I react or respond to these characters can help me kind of really unwind from the matrix with that 12th gene key. Because in purity, there is no separation, right? So it's the recognition that there's these individual people, but at the level of consciousness, we really are all one. At the level of consciousness, we are all one. And that means even the people that we struggle with. Right?
Yeah, this is also fascinating, and I'm sure we could talk about this for hours. But as the collective consciousness right now on the planet is all individually working through their own shadows and their own collective dark night of the soul and their own process of personal growth and spiritual evolution, I think that having an understanding or even an introduction to gene keys in the way that you've presented it here can be really helpful along their journey. It's just another one of those tools for understanding and integrating this kind of information of our purpose, our reason for being here, the greatest challenges that we have in our lifetime, our shadows, things that we have to work through, and what our gifts, our prime gifts and our geniuses are, that we can learn to embrace and learn to utilize. I think all of this information is incredible. And if somebody wanted to work with you and have like an introductory session, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so my website is my name, Matthew Ashdown. So MATTHEW, and Ashdown is ASHDOWN, Ashdown. And it's matthewashdown.ca here in Canada. So they can find out my gene key profile sessions there. And so I do single introductory sessions, or I do what are called catalyst sessions. My preference is for the catalyst sessions, which is really so that they can walk away and practice it. There's 3 sessions where they can walk away, practice it in between sessions, so that when we reconnect and we meet up, there can just be this, we've seen the progress, we've seen how working with it is helping, and then we can kind of simplify it further each time. So the catalyst sessions are just a way to really deepen into that. Introductory sessions are great as well. What I've just found with those, it can lead to a sense of overwhelm in that
sense. Right.
So much. So that would be my only recommendation, is that for the catalyst sessions, I do offer both. And then I work with groups as well, and I love working with groups online. And so I take people through different parts of the journey at different times. So the next course I have offering coming up is August the 23rd. And it's the Venus sequence. So that's working through healing of relationships. And it's the juiciest part of the whole sequence, actually. It really is. And that's where, that's the one that saved my relationship. When I met my wife in 2012, I also found the gene keys. And it was almost like, here, Matthew, here's your future wife. And she's a good one. And you're not allowed to screw this up. So here's the gene keys in the Venus sequence. Get working on it. And
wow.
Yeah, it was.
I definitely like to check that out. So that is the course that you do, working through the Venus sequence. Is that like a workshop, like a one-time course, or
this
ongoing?
Particular one is a weekly online meetup. So we meet for one evening per week. And then the thing with the gene keys is like, it really is as much as you want to put into it and as much as you're able to put into it. So I work with mothers who have like 10 minutes a day for themselves. and I work with others who can dedicate their whole life to this. And there's no leaving anybody behind. We're all journeying through this in our own time and in our own way. So yeah, we have the 2 hours where we meet up on a whatever night it is, I can't remember. I think it's a Tuesday. And then excuse me. And then people work on it in their own time. And my
Right.
voice is saying you're done.
All right. Okay. I'll put all of that information in the description of this video down below for anybody that's interested. Is there anything else that you would like to say to the audience before you go?
Yeah, I would say that the greatest pull, that the reason that people come to the work of the Gene Keys is because they're looking for a sense of purpose. And in this time of change and transformation, a lot of people are losing their old jobs and are wanting to start up businesses and are feeling a little lost.
Right.
And even in the feeling, in many indigenous cultures, they intentionally lose people as part of their initiation. So we're going through an initiation right now in the collective. And one of the challenges we faced in this Western world is that so many of us have identified our purpose as what we do, like this great achievement, this thing, that legacy that we leave behind. And that's absolutely a part of our journeys. And at the same time, if we haven't got that attunement to that sense of purpose that's inside of our being, like, I could go to the grave relatively soon, I think, and feel a deep sense of fulfillment because I've attuned deeply to my purpose gene key. I may not have reached the fame that I once drove for in my life, but I was always looking for a sense of purpose in something I did. Whereas this, it returns it back to in this moment, this here and now, so that our purpose is a quality that we attune to inside of our inner being that is present in each and every moment. Like, for instance, yours is the gift of competency in the gene keys, and you might go in and look at that and explore that with your own curiosity. But for me, myself, I can see it in just how you bring it to this podcast and this discussion. I can really hear that gene key moving through you, see it, feel it. And so, that's what I would say, is that it's subtle. It's subtle. It's not always loud, but the more we attune to it, the more that just emerges through everything we do. And you just don't know what is possible in these coming years, where we're going through a breakdown, but also a breakthrough.
I love that. I love everything you've shared today. Thank you so much for having this conversation and for this introduction to gene keys and how we can use the gene keys to unlock the 3D matrix of control and to attain our purpose and our higher selves in the 5D consciousness. Thank you very much. Everyone else, please like this video because it helps with my algorithm. Please subscribe to Lady Braven of the Pride, because we have these amazing, courageous, incredible conversations all the time. And yeah, thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you next time. And remember that courage is contagious. Thanks a lot, guys. See you next time.